Depth without retention is a leaky bucket. A common issue that we see for people that are scoring 80% is that they will go deep, they will genuinely understand it, but they don't use spaced repetition consistently or correctly. As a consequence, they're constantly learning and forgetting and then have to go back and relearn the material. This keeps the ceiling of their score very low because they're constantly rebuilding instead of building on top of what it is that they've already learned. The rule, and this is critical that you remember, once you learn something, you must never ever forget it. Just think, if the only thing you could do was take your weakest subject and make it your strongest subject every single day, and then use spaced repetition to never ever forget that information, your score is just a product of the amount of time and effort and energy that you're putting in to mastering new topics. And this is what we found. For everyone who went from a really low score to a really high score in a very short period of time, every single one of them learned how to use spaced repetition the right way so that they never forgot what it is that they learned and did not have to go back and relearn the things that they covered previously. So the most common question that we get now is, do I have to make my own cards? Now, I know that there's a lot of pre-made decks out there that have you memorizing someone else's understanding of the material. I'm gonna make this really simple. You should still make your own cards so that you're connecting concepts and explaining clinical presentations. This allows not only deeper encoding, it also means that you can target the things that you are weak on in particular, and you don't have to go in a lot of depth on the things that you already know. Depth is the engine, spaced repetition is the lock, and together they make your score improvement permanent. So now you know how to study, but where do you aim all of that effort? This brings us to step number 4, focus on weaknesses, not strengths. Your weaknesses are where the biggest improvements in your score are hiding. I saw this recently where there was someone who was already pretty strong in immunology, and he said that, well, I got a low score on my immunology in my last NBME, even though all of the NBMEs before that were pretty strong, and so I started to do immunology. The issue is that you go from, say, 70% to 80% in something that you're already strong in, you'll get 10%, but for a subject that might be 10% of the test, that's only a 1% improvement in your overall score. Instead, if you can go from 30% to 70% in a weak subject, that's gonna be 40% improvement. If that same subject comprised 10% of the exam, that's a 4 percentage point improvement on your overall score. In other words, the return on focusing on your weaknesses is dramatically higher than if you focus on the things that you're already good at. I know that this makes sense logically, so why is it that so many of us avoid the things that we're already weak on? First of all, studying strengths feels pretty good, right? You're already getting questions right, and so when you get more questions right, you're gonna feel even more smart. Particularly for people who are seeing their scores kind of stagnate and they're not, scoring very well, or maybe they've failed their exam in the past. This is particularly seductive because we want to have that feeling of like, oh yeah, no, I know this, I can do this. And studying the things that we're already good at is a really simple way of achieving that. In contrast, studying our weaknesses feels terrible. We're gonna start out not knowing nearly as much information. We're gonna get tons more questions wrong in the beginning. And when we look at the list of things we're gonna have to learn in order to get that to become a strength, it's gonna be a much larger list. However, that discomfort is exactly where score improvement lives. So if you found this helpful and want to get more questions correct for the knowledge that you already have, be sure to click in the description for our 14-step free program. And if you want help getting there faster and want to work with our team, you'll have the option of booking a free assessment with our team. And if it makes sense to work with you, we'll explain exactly what it would look like so that you can get a higher score in less time.